It's a new era for UCLA football, a new coaching staff, a lot of roster turnover, and a new conference. Similar to Washington is this UCLA team and program. We're going to go through and do predictions for every single game. But first, just some initial thoughts on this team. I think people are overlooking this team just a little bit. I think if you look at the roster, there's still talent on this roster. They've got Ethan Garbers back at quarterback. You've got some talented wide receivers, running backs, defensive players. There's not a huge weakness on this team. At the line of scrimmage, are they going to be good enough, physical enough to hold up in the Big Ten? That'll be a question. And depth, I think, is going to be a question because of some of the players and pieces that they lost. But overall, I don't think this team's going to be terrible. I think they'll be competitive in the Big Ten. The problem for them is going to be the schedule. And I think the schedule is going to make it tough for them just to get to a bowl game, and that's kind of where Vegas is as well. You see the over/under at 5.5 wins, so 5-7, 6-6, the most likely record for this UCLA team. You've got LSU, Oregon, Penn State. Those 3 games in a row, very, very tough. And this stretch to close out the season: at Rutgers, at Nebraska, Iowa, at Washington, USC, and then even Fresno State. So this is a really, really tough schedule. I can't remember now where they ranked in our schedule rankings, but I'm pretty positive they were in the top 10 for top 10 toughest schedules this upcoming season. Their first game is going to be a trip to Hawaii, so a good way to start the season. You get to go to Hawaii, and I believe they'll come away with a win there against a Mountain West team that's not great. So they should be able to take care of business there, and it's a game that the new faces on this team, the new coaching staff and everything, maybe they start off slow and this game's close for a while, but I just don't see them losing. So they'll have a bye week actually in week 2, then they'll be back home for Indiana. I've been talking about this Indiana team. I think they're going to be pretty good this year. So this could be a great matchup. I would say these teams are pretty even. Indiana going to have some firepower on offense as well. And this could be a pretty high scoring game. I think UCLA playing at home with some of their veterans, I think they get the win here. So I'm going to say UCLA beats Indiana, but then they go on the road to face LSU the next week. It's going to be very tough to stop this LSU offense. And then you wonder about, playing against the defense of LSU at home. I know they weren't great last year, but defenses usually play pretty well at home. And that's a tough place to play coming off of what I think will be a very close, hard-fought win over Indiana. I don't see UCLA really hanging around too much in this one. I don't think it's a blowout, don't get me wrong, but I think LSU should be able to take care of business here. All right, next you've got Oregon on September 28th. A home game for UCLA against maybe the most talented team that they'll play this season. It's going to be tough. Oregon's just a much, much better team. I don't really see UCLA making this one close. So going with Oregon there. And then you got to go. This stretch right here, these 3 games, at LSU, Oregon, at Penn State, absolutely brutal. You go to Penn State against a physical defense that's probably going to, make this a more of a lower scoring game than maybe the LSU and Oregon games. But UCLA's offense, I think, is going to struggle against that Penn State defense, struggle on the road. I like Penn State to win by at least a couple of touchdowns. So 2-3 start. Then they'll play Minnesota. Minnesota is going to be okay this year. You look at the quarterback transfer they brought in from the lower level. We'll see how that works out. I think Minnesota's going to be okay. I don't think they're going to be bad. But UCLA playing at home, I think they're a little bit more talented. It's a close one. I think it's one that they could lose, but I'm going UCLA here in this one. Next, we've got at Rutgers on October 19th. This will be a tough matchup here. I think it's a very good defense. I still question the Rutgers offense, and if they're going to be able to score a whole lot of points, I think they're going to have to lean on that defense. I think UCLA has enough on offense that they'll be able to score in this game, at least enough to get a close win. So a couple of close wins, and really you look at Indiana, Minnesota, and Rutgers. I think all 3 of those wins will be very, very close. So they'll get a bye week after traveling to Rutgers, and then they'll go back on the road to face Nebraska. It's going to be a very sound Nebraska team. I think there's not a huge gap between UCLA and Nebraska. I think they're pretty even. I think Nebraska might be a little bit better. Of course, with Dylan Raiola at quarterback, that's going to be the wild card. If he's great, Nebraska could be really good. If he's not, they might struggle again. But that's a really tough place to play. I just don't see UCLA going on the road and winning that game. So going Nebraska. And then we've got Iowa on a Friday night. Quick turnaround. A really, really good defense. Similar to the Penn State game, I think UCLA is going to struggle to score because they're going up against a great defense. Iowa should win in the trenches. Iowa probably not going to score a whole lot, but they'll score enough to win this one. Washington next. I talked about this at the beginning. UCLA and Washington very similar with the roster turnover, the coaching changes, new conference. This should be a good matchup here. I do think Washington's still a little bit ahead of UCLA, though. I think they're the better team. Plus, they're playing at home. We're going to go Huskies here. And then they'll have USC on the 23rd. USC is definitely a mystery. If they can get better on defense with the weapons they have on offense and Lincoln Riley calling plays, this should be a pretty good team. But if they struggle defensively, this is a game I think UCLA can win. Again, I think they have a shot if that's the case. But if USC makes some strides defensively and they at least get to be an average defense, I don't see them really losing this game. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think USC will be better this year. So I'm going USC. But again, that's a game UCLA could win. And it's a game they might have to win to get to a bowl game. They do have Fresno State last. A pretty good team out of the Mountain West. I think this is a tough one for UCLA, but I think they have enough to get the win. So going with the win over Fresno State, and they finish 5-7, not quite making a bowl game. It's tough to find 6 wins here on this schedule. You look at the Rutgers game. That's a game they could lose. Indiana and Minnesota. Those are games they could lose, even Fresno State. So, I mean, if it goes really, really bad for UCLA, I mean, they could go 1-11. So I just do not see them getting to a bowl game. It's not that I think that this is a bad team. If I was just, using the average schedule and just looking at this team, I'd say, yeah, that's probably a 6-6, 7-5 team. But when you go up against this schedule, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going 5-7. And give me your predictions for UCLA down in the comments below.